I can train or study as much as I want to, and like, what do I know about your life? Like, I don't know anything about your life, right? But I had a question about how to keep the relationship flame going. So I think that people need to understand that you don't have to have like a particular problem to go to therapy. He can get there and you can too. That I think is a very important lesson, right? That's the final boss. When the final boss shows up, you don't just like say, "Oh, fuck this, I'm done." So that's fucking Twitch's problem, right? Is that like half of y'all are giver uppers. This is the other thing, is that a lot of people live their life based on the imagined emotions of other people. Sometimes I feel I can do everything, and someday soon I feel I can't because I have a fear of failure. How do I deal with this? Right? It's just not meditation to remove yourself from the negative. It's meditation to remove yourself from the positive too. What about listening to music while doing brain intensive work like studying coding algorithm questions? I like to listen to techno while doing coding practice, but recently I've started to experiment with not listening to music to see if it will help me focus better. So I think here's the thing. So, oh wow, thank you for the gifted subs, Confused Monkey, and keep our scam train going, guys. So, I think the key thing, so this person's saying, like, I listen to techno while I'm doing coding practice, but recently I've started to experiment with not listening to music to see if it will help me focus better. What do you think? So I think the most important thing is that you experiment, right? Like, it's not about what I think is right or wrong. So, like, you guys have to understand this, okay? So people come to the stream and they think that this is about expertise, right? But it's not. Like, I can train or study as much as I want to, and like, what do I know about your life? Like, I don't know anything about your life, right? Not true, but when it really comes down to it, it's like, you guys should experiment with the stuff that I do. Like, don't take what I say as gospel. Like, that's not what we're trying to do here. Like, the goal is to give you guys options for you to experiment and then like figure out what works for you. So I'm the same way. Sometimes I like to work while doing music. I tend to work really well in some ways. Some kinds of cognitive activity I think go well with music. Other kinds of cognitive activity I like silence, or I work best in silence. And so, you know, I think you should experiment for yourself. Like, so when I'm writing some kinds of stuff, I like music or I like silence. When I'm doing other kinds of work, like if I'm building a to-do list, I like to do it in silence. I listen to something upbeat if I'm feeling low, and especially if I'm going to do something like stream or teach. So when I put on like a stage presence and when I sort of need to be in the zone, I'll like listen to some kind of upbeat music. I have like a playlist of like stuff like Das Malefiz. And it sort of depends. So I think kind of figure out what works for you. Question for Dr. Kame. Yeah, now the disclaimer is over, y'all can just head out. Hi, Dr. K, my name is Sabina. Hello, Sabina. I live in Europe, so I watch your streams after they are done airing, because sleep, good for you. But I had a question about how to keep the relationship flame going. Okay, I moved to Germany for my girlfriend, and we are together now for 6 months, and it's just perfect. Respect, trust, time to ourselves, going on dates, being able to chill together. At the moment, I feel like I have the perfect relationship. We want to move in together after she is done with school this summer. Do you have any tips on how to keep a relationship really good after moving in, or generally after being together for long? I watch all of your streams, so if you include the question, I would be very grateful. Thanks for helping me procrastinate less, by the way, really helped. Okay, so first thing is, I don't know if this question applies to many other people who are watching, right? So, like, how do you keep a relationship good or keep it going is probably going to be confusing for most of the people who are watching. So, yeah, sorry, I can't help myself. So you guys know I love y'all, right? And I actually do respect you, and I know many of you guys are in relationships, but let's be clear. Like, I'm envisioning, so just so you guys know, in my mind, when I picture my viewer, I picture myself at the age of 19. Like, that's who I'm talking to. And at that point, if you guys want to hear a super cringe story, I'll tell you guys the most cringe thing that I've ever done in terms of asking a girl out, or actually not even asking a girl out. I'll tell you guys on Valentine's Day. So remind me to tell the story. Most mortifying thing. I still get emotional about it when I think about it. So let's answer this question though. So, okay. So how do you keep things good in a relationship. So the first thing to understand is that, I'd be really curious how old this person is. But the thing to remember is that like relationships are going to change over time and people are going to change over time. So if you're trying to preserve what you have now, that's not going to work. The first thing to understand, right? So people are going to change, people are going to grow. So it sounds like you're dating a student right now, and that person soon may not be a student. So their life is going to change, their pressures are going to change, their stress is going to change, they're going to be exposed to different people. So I think the best way to keep a healthy relationship is to understand what's happening in your relationship and also not try to hold on to it. So don't try to hold on to a particular thing, because understand that people are going to change over time and that your relationship is going to change over time and that you have to like kind of roll with the punches. So as demands on each of y'all change, as you guys grow as people, like be really proactive about it. Because I think what the reason that relationships fail over time is because people are growing and changing without actually talking about it or realizing it. And then like 5 years down the road, you're like in this situation where you've been engaged for 3 years and neither of y'all is really sure if you want to get married, but you have so much momentum, you just kind of stay in the relationship. You stay in the relationship out of momentum instead of like growing together. And then over time, you start to resent each other because you're not the person that they used to be. They're not, you're not the person that you used to be. They're not the person they used to be. And that's okay. It's just the more you guys are aware of how you guys change. And like, if you share that with your partner, they can kind of, you guys can like work through it. And you don't end up into the situation where you're like 40, married with a couple of kids. And one of you wakes up one day and is like, I want an open relationship because I want to sleep with other people. Like that's just, if you get to that point without all of the discussion that's happened, then just understand that like you're kind of like, it's going to be really tough at that point, right? So most people wait until relationships are on the verge of like having real problems before trying to go to marriage counseling or things like that, which sort of makes sense. But I think you should be really proactive about understanding how your relationship is evolving. And as long as you continue to have conversations like every 6 months or every year about, okay, where are you going? Where am I going? Where are we going? What's working for us? What isn't? Do I need to make certain sacrifices for you? Do you need to make certain sacrifices for me? So like I thankfully had those conversations with my wife sort of automatically, because after I finished college, she was still in Austin and I had the opportunity to like move to Boston to do research. And so we kind of talked about what that meant for us and like whether she was going to come or whether we were going to try long distance. And then she eventually moved to New York because her company got acquired. And then we were kind of like long distance in Boston, New York. And then like that was another conversation. Like, when are you going to move? When are you not going to move? Like, do we want to be together? How long do we want to do this? And then she was basically like, I'll move if you put a ring on it. And I was like, okay. So then it was kind of up to me. And so I put a ring on it. And then she moved. And we're at not really that happily ever after part, but we're pretty happy right now. So, okay. Okay. So I think it's reasonable, right? So if you have demands and things that you want in a relationship, you should share them with someone. Demands doesn't sound right, but okay. So how do I know if I should seek therapy for a specific problem? I just turned 24 and I haven't had a girlfriend. I've been with girls, but I just can't seem to be able to build a relationship. What do you think, Reckful?
I got this. Okay, so should I really critically think and then answer, or just spit out what it's
just
coming in my
spit
head?
out, dude.
Okay, so the nice thing about therapy is you'll have all these thoughts going through your head back and forth of like, am I doing the right thing here? Am I doing the right thing here? Well, maybe this is bad. Maybe that's bad. But then you'll just say all your thoughts, and then the therapist will kind of lead you in a healthy direction. Maybe give you a few options still, but just the healthier ones, so you can cut out the ones that aren't healthy. So it's like you're playing Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. There's A, B, C, D. I just thought of this analogy, and then you do the 50-50 thing. The therapist gives you the 50-50 thing instead of you picking from 4 options. And then it makes your whole life seem a lot simpler.
So it sounds like you think this person should go to therapy for this.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. So first of all, Reckful, beautiful analogy there. And I think that people need to understand that you don't have to have like a particular problem to go to therapy, because part of what therapy is about is, like Reckful said, helping you narrow down like what the issues are. Right? So if you're 24 and you don't have a girlfriend, is it because you just have had bad luck, or because you don't leave the house, or because you're like, so it sounds like you've been with girls and so you date, but you may have some other kinds of psychological issues kind of going on that prevent you from getting into a relationship. And also, like, it could just be that you just haven't met someone that you think is worth having a relationship with. Right. So I think going to therapy is like a great idea if there's some place in your life where you feel stuck and you're not quite sure why or how to move forward. I think therapy is a great option. So I mean, I understand what y'all mean. So I think the question is, would it have been more productive if he was not on psilocybin? So first of all, we don't know what he was on or what he wasn't on, right? So let's just be clear about that we perceived something and we can have a hypothesis and we can have a high likelihood of, I don't know how to do that. Okay. Anyway, I don't know how to do that, but so we can have a hypothesis, but then the other thing that I want to share with you guys is like, so be patient, right? With yourselves and with him, and that we take people like the way that they are on stream. And that can mean happy, that can mean sad, that can mean whatever. I mean, unless it becomes like a really problematic. But I think the other thing that was, so you could say, like, I could have gotten upset, right? I could have said, oh, like he's fucking high, like this is a waste of time. He keeps on getting distracted. That's really easy to do. And there's a good reason you could do that. You could sort of say like, hey, if you're not going to take this seriously, like whatever. You could do all of that stuff. But I don't think that's what we're here for, right? We're here because sometimes people show up and they're not on their A game. And when they're not on their A game, or he may think he's on his A game, I don't know. So you guys decide what's A game and what isn't. But like, that's how you are. Like, sometimes you're not on your A game and like you should cut yourself some slack and like don't give up on yourself or don't give up on someone else for not showing their A game. You take people where they are. You meet people where they are. That's where you start. You don't expect them to be what they are not. Right? That's not like, help is not conditional based upon someone being where you want them to be or someone being where they should be. Like, you meet people where they are. That's the only way that change happens. So do I think it's productive? Absolutely. So I think like we learned an important lesson today, right? Which now I'm going to sound arrogant, but I hope you guys, everyone who's judging him for being the way that he was, that you can be productive if you stick with it. That you should not give up. Because I think that everyone would have been fine if I cut off the interview after 15 minutes, I said, hey, this is just not working. Like, everyone would have been fine with that, right? So, like, be patient. It's not about perseverance. It's not necessarily about never giving up, because I think, at some point things are futile. But be patient. Be patient with people. Be patient with yourselves, most of all. And like, understand, because what do you guys do? Like, when you don't show up with your A game for yourself in your own life, how do you treat yourself? You treat yourself terribly. You give up on yourself so easily. You beat the crap out of yourself. You're lazy. You're stupid. You're undisciplined. Not stupid, because you guys think you're smart. Right? You're lazy. So don't do that. Don't give up on yourself. It can be productive. Be patient. Give yourself a chance. And despite any amount of like stuff that's floating around in your brain, like, you can actually find a productive something at the end of it if you just stick it through. So, I mean, I think another version of this question is that, like, do I think the session would have been different or arguably more productive? Absolutely. Right? So if someone's not distracted, but like dealing with distraction is like actually really important. So on the other hand, like, just the fact that you can, I mean, despite everything that was stacked against us in terms of emotions, ADHD, a dude doing fucking construction, he can get there and you can too. That, I think, is a very important lesson, right? That's the final boss. When the final boss shows up, you don't just like say, oh, fuck this, I'm done. When the final boss shows up, you level up and you rise to the challenge, and whether it be construction or psilocybin or emotions or trauma, or whatever the fuck it is, you do what you showed up to do. That's what you gotta do. So don't fucking give up. Okay. How do you grow up from being emotionally neglected for a long time? So I think it takes time. So the first thing is, so someone's saying, I'm a give-upper. Yeah, like, that. So that's fucking Twitch's problem, right? Is that like half of y'all are giver-uppers. And when I say half of y'all, what I'm thinking of, once again, is my 19-year-old self. I was definitely a giver-upper. Like, I was a giver-upper. And be patient with yourself, because it took me 8 years from being on academic probation to starting med school. Like, 8 years. 8 years is a long-ass time. Like, long time. And starting med school, by the way, was 10 years ago. So starting med school is 8 years after being a giver-upper, and then it takes another decade to get to where I am today. 18 years of my life have been spent on this journey. So don't judge yourself for fucking around for 2 or 3. Like, 2 or 3 is nothing, man. Give yourself time. Stick it through to the end. So how do you grow up from being emotionally neglected for a long time? So I think it happens slowly, okay? And I think that, unfortunately, like, you can't fix all of the emotional neglect yourself. I think what you can fix is, like, if you have... So emotional neglect is going to result in certain patterns that affect your current relationships. The real solution is to not be emotionally neglected, right? To engage in relationships. There's no substitute for love. So if you weren't, like, appropriately loved when you were growing up, like, you can't just be a pillar by yourself. Like, human beings need love. So you have to engage in a relationship where you, like, a healthy relationship. It doesn't have to be romantic, but it can be like with a mentor or a friend, or even like you can adopt or have a kid or whatever. Like, you can, there are all kinds of healthy relationships through which you can undo emotional neglect. The real challenge is that as a result of that emotional neglect, you are going to exhibit certain behaviors and have certain cognitive biases that are going to make it hard for you to successfully engage in a healthy relationship. So your job is to understand yourself, go to therapy, learn to meditate, do some yoga, do all of the above, and notice those patterns. Notice the way that you self-sabotage. Because when you're emotionally neglected, you're going to sabotage relationships. Not all the time, but, like, that's what happens for a lot of people. And then that's really the problem. So once you stop the self-sabotage, then the relationships will naturally grow, because generally speaking, I don't care what you think about yourself. Like, most human beings are actually pretty cool. Like, I don't know if y'all realize this, but, like, most people are actually pretty cool. And, like, all you have to do is, like, hang out with someone to sort of realize that most people are pretty cool. And so if you just give yourself some time and some space, like, it'll work out well. So really work on those behaviors and how your emotions influence the things that you do. Okay. Okay. So, I hate to hurt people. How do you break up with someone you genuinely care for and you're the reason they get hurt? I hate to hurt people I love. How do you break up with someone you genuinely care for and you're the reason they get hurt? Okay. That's an interesting question. So, I mean, so I think your compass should not, as bizarre as this sounds, whether you do something or don't do something should not necessarily be dictated by another person's feelings. That's my short answer, right? So if I don't like my job, but I respect my boss and he was loyal to me, and if I left, that would hurt his feelings, it doesn't mean that I should stay in his job. Right? So, like, this is going to sound really dangerous, so I want you guys to really listen carefully to what I'm saying. So, I mean, hurt feelings are a part of life. Does that mean that you should go around and be an asshole? No. But that also means that, like, it's not your responsibility, really, at the end of the day. Like, you can't control the way that someone else feels. If the relationship is not working for you, I think it's reasonable to end the relationship and do it as compassionately as possible. And do your dharma in the relationship, right? So, like, don't just, like, be an asshole to them and leave them hanging, but let them know. But I think, honestly, I mean, if you're in a relationship with someone, I think part of your dharma is to, like, give that person the opportunity to be in a relationship with someone who wants to be in a relationship with them. And if that involves a little bit of pain along the way, I think that's fine. I think it's a far bigger sin to stay in a relationship that you don't want to and have them be in a relationship with someone who doesn't want to be with them. Like, that's going to breed way more subtle resentment, passive aggressive stuff, and all kinds of crap that's like incredibly toxic and under the surface. So I think that you just gotta, I understand that you hate to hurt people that you love, but I think sometimes you have to do things that they may find hurtful. This is the other thing, is that a lot of people live their life based on the imagined emotions of other people. Just think about this for a second, right? You don't know what they're actually going to experience. But the reason that you stay in the relationship is because when you imagine their reaction, you imagine that hurt, and you're actually living your life based on your imagination of someone else's reaction. Like, what the actual fuck is that? That is no way to live life. You are controlled by hypothetical emotions in future human beings. Like, so what's up with that, right? So this is something that I work on a fair amount. This is part of our curriculum, by the way, that I'm developing, because this is a common thing, right? So this is a quote from like a lecture or like class or something. I'm putting out a series of lectures. That a lot of people live based on the imagined emotions of others. And that's actually how you live your life. You live your life based on hypotheticals. So don't do that, right? We'll explore like what that's about, and I can talk more about that. But, also understand that like people can be disappointed and be hurt and also be happy for you, because people are multidimensional. Like if you tell someone, hey, I just don't think this is the right relationship. I love you a lot, but I just don't see us together like long term. And I'm sorry, like I've been trying to not do this because I care about you so much and I don't want to hurt you. But at the same time, like I just don't think it's fair to you for me to actually stay in this relationship out of loyalty. And I think we should end things. And then you listen to what they say. And if they have like really good arguments for you to stay, or they want to give it another shot and they want to give it 3 months and see where it goes, like you can have that conversation. My point is that like that conversation needs to be had. Right? So you break up with someone and you be honest with them, because they deserve your honesty. They don't deserve your like obfuscation and you hiding your feelings. And if there's some reason that the relationship isn't working out, like that's the way you repair it. You start with a conversation. You want to break up with them for a particular reason, right? But that's got to come out into the open, because if you have a grievance, you have to give them a chance to solve it. Otherwise the relationship's not going to work. Okay, how do you deal with self-doubt? Sometimes I feel I can do everything, and someday soon I feel I can't because I have a fear of failure. How do I deal with this? Okay. So how do you deal with self-doubt sometimes? Sometimes I feel I can do everything, and someday soon I feel I can't because I have a fear of failure. How do I deal with this? Okay, so there's like a short answer, and there's a long answer. The first is that you actually fail. Is that you just fail, right? Because if you fail and if you survive and you get used to failure, it's kind of like Reckful, right? He's actually okay with rejection. He gets okay handling rejection. He's gotten good at it. Just fail and survive. And then like you fail a couple times and you fail a couple more times and you fail a couple more times. So I had something like 140 rejections from med school before I got accepted. The first 5 hurt a lot. The next 20 hurt a lot. The next 10, not so much. And then the next year, the first 5, so like 40 through 45 hurt a lot. And then they hurt a lot, and they hurt a lot, and they hurt a lot. And then you get used to it, and then you just keep going. So oddly, I think the solution to fear of failure, it's like, how do you overcome a fear of heights or a fear of dogs? Is like exposure therapy, right? Like you go and you hang out with a dog, you manage your fear, you see that you're alive. You go to the Empire State Building and you look down and you feel like, oh my God, that's so scary. And then you look out of your airplane window and things like that. You do things in a safe manner, but you expose yourself to your fear and you begin to realize that actually, just like Reckful, the fear of rejection is more dangerous than rejection itself. And that generally is true. Like fear of things is actually like worse oftentimes than the thing itself. Obvious caveats, like that's not blanketly true. Like I'd rather be afraid of cancer than get cancer, right? So like, it's not like blanketly true, but generally speaking, fear of a thing is worse for us than the thing itself. Fear is absolutely the mind killer, right? Frank Herbert. So the longer thing, there's more to this question though, because I want to point something out to you guys. Fear of failure and failing is like one solution, although that's a potential challenge, right? Because you don't want to just run around failing everything. Like, that's not good. But I want to point something else to you guys. How can I copy this? Okay. I'm going to just switch this. This is going to be our last question, by the way. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to point something out to you guys. Okay? Very important. Not Discord. Streamlabs. Not Streamlabs. Here we go. Okay. How do you deal with self-doubt sometime? Okay. We're going to just add some grammar, okay? And punctuation. I feel I can do everything, and someday soon I feel I can't because I have a fear of failure. Period. How do I deal with this? Okay. So let's start with this. So the first thing is, what is this? What's that? What do you guys think? What does that mean? Yeah, colors, right? It's gray. Right, so people are saying fear, right? So this in and of itself is not necessarily true. So we can see that this person has a complex in their mind, a samskar, right? A cognitive bias that failure is inevitable. And they have this pattern where they feel like they're doing everything right and it's all going to come crashing down. Very common pattern. Do you guys see that? It's like success, 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 and failure. They feel like the failure is inevitable. So this pattern needs to be dealt with. Because this isn't necessarily true. Like, you can just... Like, this sentence right here actually speaks to a lot of, like, cognitive bias about how this person deals with the world. This is their self-doubt. The next thing is that this problem is not going to be fixed until this portion goes away. So the pathology here is not that failure is inevitable, but that they actually, like, they don't stay stable. They have high highs and they have low lows. So you feel like you're on top of the world and you're amazing and everything is great, and then everything crashes. And that's because, like, this feeling is going to end, because that's not how real life is, right? You can't feel like you're going to do everything. Like, that feeling is going to come with, like, the other side of the coin, which is, like, the feeling of failure. So interestingly enough, what this person needs to do is be a little bit more even. And what they try to do is they deal with the self-doubt, right? But if you guys want some real five-head shit, what the question should be is, how do I deal with unrealistic overconfidence? Do you guys see that? You can't have one without the other. So, in a subtle but important way, this is the big problem. Because I think this is why they've failed, because they haven't correctly diagnosed the problem. Because they keep on focusing on fear and self-doubt, they don't actually realize that, like, this is a problem and this is a problem. Because if you have unrealistic overconfidence, your hopes are going to be dashed. Right? So you have to see that. And so what this person needs to do is not meditate when they're feeling doubtful, right? So the other thing about Reckful is it's not just meditating through bad emotions. I want you guys to understand this. Does anyone understand why? So I don't know if you all caught this, but, like, when he asked me to say cockpog, Why did I say it? Does anyone understand this? Okay. So I think... So you guys, for those of you who think that I'm trying to distract him from the negative emotions, that is partially right. Okay? The other reason that I said it is that I wanted to teach him to breathe through the highs and the lows. Right? It's just not meditation to remove yourself from the negative. It's meditation to remove yourself from the positive too. It's finding equilibrium in face of the highs and in space of the lows. Because Reckful too suffers this thing where he gets super excited and then super let down. So detachment, or vairagya, which is the Sanskrit word, is about being detached from the good and detached from the bad. And so I trained myself for the moment where there's this thing called match day, where you figure out where you're going to do your residency training. And I went there, and I sort of knew I had a pretty good shot of getting into Mass General Hospital and HM at Harvard Medical School. And I trained myself for that moment, and I meditated, and I said, whatever this piece of paper says, I'm not going to feel elatement, and I'm not going to feel disappointment. Both of them are off the table. I do not want either one. The paper says what it is going to say, and that will determine my future, so be it. I'm going to do the best that I can, no matter what the piece of paper says. And then you open the piece of paper, and then I saw Mass General Hospital, McLean Hospital, Harvard Medical School. I smiled. Yay. My wife was overjoyed. Everyone else was overjoyed. I was like, great. So be it. So be it. Tranquility and equilibrium through the positive and the negative. Because if you get disrupted on the top end, you're going to face the low end. Tranquility is not just about avoidance of negative emotions. It's about avoidance, it's not avoidance of negative or positive. It's tranquility in the face of both. So you should meditate when you're happy, and you should meditate when you're sad. You should meditate during all of these different times and be able to find that place within yourself. It is not just an avoidance of pain. Right? Does that make sense? So it is being with yourself, and this is how you really develop confidence. Because if you can be tranquil within yourself and not be buffeted by the winds of success, then you also will not be buffeted by the winds of failure. The problem is that everyone tries to use meditation as a treatment to avoid negative emotion, and they're missing the point. It is a treatment to avoid attachment to all emotion. To be able to live life in a tranquil state and enjoy what comes at you, no matter what comes. To be able to face it no matter what comes. Whether the person that you're trying to talk to is high on psilocybin or not high on psilocybin, you are there for a reason, and you do the work that you need to do. Whether they break down in 15 minutes and inflate your ego because that's what everyone wants to see, or they don't break down in 15 minutes, you are there to do what you want to do. So be tranquil within yourself. Meditate in face of the good and the bad, and don't just chase success, and don't try to avoid failure. Both of those things are equally bad. Do the best that you can, do what you showed up to do, and that's the goal. And success will come. Should you strive to accomplish? Absolutely. But don't get caught up in it.